We will make life more affordable. We will continue to fight climate change. We will get guns off our streets, and we will keep investing in Canadians.
Okay, breaking political news overnight. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau celebrating after narrowly winning a second term. Trudeau overcame a series of scandals to hold on to his job. Of course, that revelation that he wore blackface several times. CNN's Paula Newton is live in Montreal with more. So this was a nail-biter, huh, Paula?
Absolutely. And, you know, he didn't even win the popular vote. Sound familiar? He will still get another opportunity to govern. But listen, this is a completely different mandate for Justin Trudeau. He's going to have to bring in other parties to get anything passed. And that will include, guys, the USMCA that Donald Trump wants so much. You know, this was an incredibly nasty campaign. I think many Canadians will agree. They're just glad this whole thing is over. You know, last night when they were giving those speeches, we were here in Montreal at Trudeau headquarters, the leaders couldn't even coordinate who was coming on air. And they all gave their either victory or concession speeches at the same time. People just want this ugly mess over. And what was a part of the ugliness, of course, were those blackface scandals. You know, it was really interesting here when I was last talking to you guys about this. I assumed that Canadians would punish him more. Certainly there is that relief from Trudeau. He was contrite, he was apologetic from the beginning, was very blunt. But right now, this has been certainly stinging confirmation that they were embarrassed by this and they do want him to do better. What was so interesting here is that even after that scandal, Barack Obama came into the campaign and broke really with convention, saying that the world needed progressive leaders like Justin Trudeau and encouraging his so-called neighbors to the north, his friends to the north, to vote for him. And many indeed did. At issue now is a divided country, right? And we had so many different regional campaigns here. When you think that a separatist party, once again, in this province in Quebec, got up to 10% of the seats and will make life very difficult for him. What we're looking at here is a diminished leader, both at home and abroad, and you are going to see a very different face of Justin Trudeau going forward, one who won't be as confident, especially even when he's dealing with Donald Trump and all the issues that will be coming down the pipe for the neighbors, both the U.S. and Canada.
After such an astonishing week in the impeachment inquiry, including that admission and then the subsequent walkback from acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney that the president held up Ukraine aid to get it to investigate Democrats. We thought you might have some questions, so what better time for cross-exam with CNN legal analyst and former federal and state prosecutor Ellie Honig. And Ellie, one viewer wants to know, to what extent did Mulvaney's public comments undercut Trump's no quid pro quo defense, and can the House use Mulvaney's comments against the president?
Well, that was certainly an interesting press conference. We saw Mulvaney get behind a microphone and very publicly engage in an act of self-destruction. He admitted there was a quid pro quo, but he told us, get over it. I've seen some weak and desperate legal defenses in my time, but get over it, I think, is a new low. Now, the White House was not over it. They very quickly walked it back, ran it back, and came up with this spin. Well, Trump's actually, he's really about busting up corruption. The problem is it's completely contrary to facts and reality. Now, can Mulvaney's statement be used against Donald Trump? Yes. There's a doctrine in law called statement by a party agent. And what that means is if I have somebody who speaks for me, an attorney, a spokesperson, a chief of staff, and they say something relating to that relationship, then yes, it can be used against me. But let's keep in mind, this is impeachment, so the normal courtroom rules of evidence do not apply. Really, the House and Senate can consider whatever they deem appropriate. But I do think Mick Mulvaney's statement is very much in play and will prove very damaging to Donald Trump.
This week, we saw the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, go to Capitol Hill. He testified behind closed doors to Congress under subpoena that he was directed by President Trump to work with Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine. And one viewer asks this: can the president order government employees to defy a House subpoena? And what are the consequences if that employee disobeys the president? So the president certainly has been trying. They've been stonewalling this impeachment inquiry from the start, giving a blanket order that executive branch employees should not obey subpoenas. That said, we saw that stonewall start to crumble this week as a parade of career public officials came in and gave testimony. They essentially said,
all due respect, Mr. President, we got subpoenas. We are going to testify. There's really only one thing that the White House can do to stop it, and it's to go into court and get a restraining order stopping these people from testifying. But it's difficult to do that legally, and importantly, they did not do it this week. So I think the White House called its own bluff. The other potential remedy is they could fire people who testified, but that would be politically reckless and I think would cause a serious public backlash.
The president and his legal team have given all sorts of reasons for not releasing the president's tax returns. He's under audit, voters don't care, they're too complex, just a few examples of the excuses. But one viewer wants to know what happens next in the courts on Congress's effort to obtain his tax returns.
So important ruling from the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. They upheld the congressional subpoena to Mazars, which is the accounting firm that has Trump's tax returns. The Court of Appeals made an important ruling. Congress has broad, not unlimited, but broad subpoena power. And importantly, the court said the House does not need to take a full vote in order to start an impeachment inquiry. I think it's worth noting, by the way, the committee that served the subpoena here was the House Oversight Committee chaired by Elijah Cummings, passed away untimely this week, but he was a long proponent of congressional oversight. I think this opinion will be an important part of his legacy. The White House has two cards left to play here. First, they can seek what's called en banc review, which means all 17 judges on the Court of Appeals in D.C. hears the case. It's very rare. I do not think it's likely they'll get it. And number two, they can try to get it to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court only takes a very small fraction of cases, under 5%. If the Supreme Court takes it, of course, they'll have the final say. If not, it's over, and those returns have to go over to Congress.
All right, and your questions for the week ahead.
It'll be another interesting week. First of all, we'll have testimony from more career public officials. Most interesting will be Bill Taylor. He's the one who famously texted, "It's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with political campaigns." Second of all, how will the House respond now that the White House has ignored its subpoena for documents? And third, who knows what will happen next in the saga of Rudy Giuliani? I just have to say, as a Southern District alum, it's jarring to see the former leader of that office, now in its crosshairs. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know this. If the evidence is there and the case is just, he'll be charged. If not, he won't. The Southern District will do justice one way or the other.
All right, Ellie Honig, as always, thank you
Thanks,
so
Anna.
much for answering all of our questions.
Tonight, the president's top diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, testifying behind closed doors in what Democrats are calling a sea change moment.
In my 10 short months in Congress, it's not even noon, right? And this is my most disturbing day in Congress so far.
According to Taylor's opening statement obtained by CNN, Taylor told the committees leading the impeachment inquiry that he was told by the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, that security aid to Ukraine was being held up in part due to the push for Ukraine to publicly investigate Ukraine's involvement in the 2016 campaign, and Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company where Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was on the board. Quote, Ambassador Sondland told me that President Trump had told him that he wants President Zelensky to state publicly that Ukraine will investigate Burisma and alleged Ukrainian interference in the 2016 U.S. election, Taylor told the committee today, adding that Sondland said he'd also made a mistake earlier by telling Ukrainian officials that a White House meeting was dependent on a public announcement of the investigations. Quote, in fact, Ambassador Sondland said everything was dependent on such an announcement, including security assistance, Taylor said today.
He's filling in some gaps. He's sharing with us in a pretty candid way and his experience.
Taylor today walked the committee through a detailed timeline of events dating back to June when he assumed the post, and saying it was in mid-July that it was becoming, quote, clear to me that the meeting President Zelensky wanted was conditioned on the investigation of Burisma and alleged Ukrainian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections. It was also clear that this condition was driven by irregular policy channel I had come to understand was guided by Mr. Giuliani, and explained his rationale for raising concerns about a potential quid pro quo over text messages discussing the halting of U.S. security aid to Ukraine with former U.S. envoy to the Ukraine Kurt Volker and Gordon Sondland. One of which on September 1st, 2019 shows Taylor asking, are we now saying that security assistance and White House meeting are conditioned on investigations? Sondland responding, call me. And in text messages a week later, Taylor writing, as I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. To which Sondland answered, Bill, I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind.